Well, welcome everybody to She Handle It. I am your guest, Arwen Becker, and I'm so excited that you've joined me on the show today. We have a real treat for you. But first, before I introduce our guest, I want to tell you a little bit about what happened to me when I was 10 years old and I was playing my first ever year of softball. Fell in love with the sport instantaneously. I had been a competitive athlete, swimming and doing a number of different things, but I got to try out for softball. Happened to get on the best team in the league that year. We ended up winning districts. I was so fascinated by this sport. It was just so fun. But my coach was incredible. Ended up being one of the best coaches I had throughout my youth. And he had 3 daughters, and his youngest daughter was my age. And so he really kind of took me under his wing and really helped me to be a great, I guess I was center fielder is what I was. And so we ended up taking districts that year, and because he won, he was the winning coach, he got to choose one kid that he could put on the all-star team. All the other kids had to be drafted or chosen by a bunch of the coaches and everything, but he could choose one kid from his team to put on the all-star team. And I couldn't believe it. He chose me. And I was so excited until I found out I was too young. They wouldn't let me play. I had an August birthday. You had to be 11 years old to play, and you had to be 11 by the start of July. And I was so disappointed. But I figured the next year I'd try out for the all-star team. I'd go this round again. And so I did. But I had to make a choice beforehand. Was I going to try out for the all-star team, or was I going to go on a trip to California with my dad and my sister to go to Disneyland, go to Universal Studios? So I had to make this choice ahead of time. And I chose the all-star team. I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to play on the all-star team. It's going to be awesome, until I didn't make it. And so not only did I not make the all-star team, but of course I had to give up this trip, and my sister got to take her best friend. It totally sucked. But what I realized through that process of getting really close but not making it is I learned so much about what it is to just persevere. Sometimes we're not ready for things, and we have to learn from it, and we have to go a different direction. And my guest today, she knows this all too well, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So my wonderful guest today is Wendy Posillico. She is the owner of Live Your June, a coaching company where she teaches elite athletes, parents, business people, or anyone in a period of transition looking to instigate their soul, disrupt their norm, and connect to who they are. As a former Class A LPGA teaching professional, Wendy has traveled with Hall of Famer Betsy King, where she quickly became involved with the Golf Fore Africa Foundation. She has served on the board of directors for Clean Water Initiative since 2009 and has had a myriad of accomplishments along that journey of her own discovery. She's made it her mission to inspire people to be more daring and authentic and to enjoy every step of their journey. And as a coach, she serves those who really want more, but she's not afraid to ask the tough, hard questions so her clients can be the very best that they can be. Being one of 6 siblings, family is extraordinarily important to her. And today, we're going to talk about her biggest and favorite blessing, her daughter, Josephine June. Wendy, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
I'm so happy to be here. It's so exciting. Thank you, Arwen. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're going to have some good stuff to talk about, and I'm really looking forward to it. But before we kind of get into that, why don't you tell me the song that you chose to add to our Overcomer playlist, and why did you choose it?
Okay, so since you mentioned Josie is a fanatic around music, which I am not. So, A Million Dreams, one of the favorite movies that she has is the Hugh Jackman movie that he was in. And A Million Dreams is just something that speaks to both of us. And like, I guess as me bringing her into this world in a unique way, we kind of like, it doesn't matter. You can have your dreams and you can go after it. And no matter what people say. And I think I've always been that rebel that maybe thinks outside the box. And that song, it's really about the growth in your journey in that having all the dreams you want.
I
and going
love
after
that.
it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love
Well,
it.
I'm going to have to add that one because I got a lot of the other ones from that soundtrack. It's a great soundtrack.
I mean, last year, my uncle, my dad's brother, my daughter did like this dance with the hat with Hugh Jackman from The Greatest Showman. And it's just in my heart, that song. And I think it's inspirational. So, yeah,
Yeah, very
I love it.
much. Very
Yeah.
much. Well, you were talking about your daughter, and I know that this has been quite a journey for you, and certainly she's a part of that journey. So, why don't you take us back to before she was born and kind of leading up to
Oh,
everything that happened
gosh.
during that time?
So before she was born, well, I mean, like you said, I'm an athlete like yourself. I grew up in a big family. I have always been in that seeking mode, but in my heart, always knew I'd have a big family. So there was this torn of being an athlete and having this big family that I wanted in my life. But really, I didn't wake up until I was 30. My first 30 years, if I wasn't playing sports, I really was lost. I was really lost in my 20s after college playing University of Vermont. I played lacrosse, Division One, and like I really didn't. I always had this feeling of not smart enough. What am I going to do? So I was always waiting for that guy to appear. Um, and in my 20s, I traveled. You name it, I did it. Nanny. I worked at a restaurant in Park City. So I lived in San Francisco, Park City, doing random jobs because I was trying to find where do I fit in. And then, like 26, I did the route that we're supposed to and got my master's in education to follow that lead that I started with in undergrad. And I started working in Harlem, teaching emotionally disturbed kids, which is kids were always a passion of mine. I wanted to be around people. And then I remember being 2 years in and I'm thinking, like waiting for the guy, and like I felt still really lost and really, happy, but not, if that makes sense.
Right.
So I was around 28, 29 on a spring break. I went down a road of, someone thought I had talent in the swinging golf club, which I hated the sport. And I went down that road as I was in my 30s to play professional golf. And as you can imagine, never playing a sport, I had a lot I put in, and doing that, I sacrificed really being around family, creating my own stability because I was putting everything into this sport. So I played for about 7 years, and three LPGA qualifying schools, never made it. Like you felt like you were banging your head against the wall. But in the back of my head, always was like, where? I wonder when that guy's going to show up. I wonder when I'm going to find that guy so I can have that thing that I always wanted, was a family. But 2037 didn't appear. I kind of gave it my last shot around that time. And I was like, I don't want to travel anymore. This is not a way of living, even though I gave it all I had. And I kind of stayed in the same realm. I didn't want to go back to teaching in Harlem. I started teaching golf at country clubs in New York, and it was great. But still, it was really difficult once I hit 38 for people to even want to have a child that I've met. So it wasn't like I didn't meet great guys.
Sure.
It was either I was traveling for my sport or I was older. And let me go back quickly. Like the crazy part is at 32, I remember going, I'm going to freeze my eggs at 35. And I went to my doctor at 35 and I was still playing golf. And I said, I really want to freeze my eggs. And she looked at me dead straight in the eye and says, maybe you should think about looking for a guy. So there was no nurturing of like where I was in my life, or even like, I mean, of course I'm trying to find a guy, but I can't make that happen. I wasn't really trying.
It's I know, lady. Thanks a lot.
It was the crazy. And the crazy thing, when I think back, even though I'm playing the sport that's such a mind sport as golf, I actually listened to her. Like I didn't do what my instinct said to do, if that makes sense.
Right.
So, and time goes by And I remember at 35, probably, I'm 38, 38 to 40, I was probably joking around like, I'm going to have a baby on my own. I'm going to have a baby on my own. Never taking a step. And hit 40, felt great. I was in the best shape of my life. I had an amazing job at a great country club out in Long Island. And it was 2 months after I hit 40 that a girlfriend kind of pushed me to take that step to go see a doctor. And again, it's not your dream to go talk to a doctor about having a baby or like, how do you go about this?
Right. Totally non-traditional. So it's not like you have people talking about it. Oh yeah, this is how I did it. And this is how I did it. You're like, I don't know what this is.
And when you actually talk about it, there's a lot of, and maybe now it's different because now it's 10 years later, but there was a lot of like, really, especially with me, because I had lived such a bizarre life of living out of my bag.
What, the people just didn't think you would, like you were serious, like they didn't take you seriously? Is that what you mean?
I don't know per se what they felt, but I feel like because I didn't have a typical lifestyle. So I taught golf 6 months of the year, and then I lived in New York, and then I lived in Arizona 6 months of the year in a house. In New York, I didn't have a home. So I was living either at the dorms at 38, 40, at the dorms where where the club gave us, or I was living at my mom's an hour away. So I lived a very abnormal. So in their eyes, like, how can you?
A little nomadic.
Yes. What do you mean you're going to have a baby? And I had no idea how I was going to make it happen. I really, in my heart, was always thinking, oh, I'm going to find someone still.
Sure.
But it wasn't until the end of October where I found myself, it's kind of hit me hard as bricks, is I found myself at the hospital supporting my brother and his wife, where they had found out their daughter, 5-week-old Whitney, had been diagnosed with kidney cancer, like the most severe you could have. And I didn't have kids. I'm one of 6. Everybody else had tons of responsibilities. So I was in the hospital with them every night, and I would hold baby Whitney on. And it was something there that clicked, like, what am I waiting for? Why am I waiting? And that was where it really shifted for me. I mean, there were a couple moments where it got like cold feet, but it took me about 3 months where I was like, nope. Yeah. And I went to my doctor where I kind of had, imagine like, okay, I don't know if you did any dating online.
Again, nope. I've been with the same person forever.
Right. So dating online, imagine like that's pretty much how you have to find your donor. So it's a very like, it's not like I'm emotional human. I'm very spiritual. And like, I couldn't wrap my head around how do you do this?
Yeah.
So I was taking baby steps, and like, I guess it was end of January, I went to the doctor in New York City, Cornell. His name was Dr. Oh my gosh, I'm spacing because there's probably a reason I'm spacing. He was the head of Cornell. And I went in and said, I'm ready. And there were like some major things that happened before. I had blocked tubes that they found out. Like there were other things, but I was ready to do the IVF that he recommended. And as I sat there with my girlfriend, Mary, next to me, he goes, have you thought about an egg donor? Literally. And I stood there as I was telling him I'm ready, had my sperm donor ready. I had to ship it from California to New York. Like, it's not an easy process. And here I hadn't even begun. And I had the top doctor telling me, maybe you should think about an egg donor. So not only am I using a sperm donor, now I'm supposed to use an egg donor.
Was it because he didn't think that your eggs were going to be any good?
Oh yeah. I mean, but I haven't even tried yet. Yes.
Right.
But he never told me 3 months ago. And all of a sudden I've been told like, and I'm ready to go. And he's like looking at me like, have you thought of this?
That had to have broke your heart. Oh my goodness.
Broke my heart. But as he's telling me to take blood work to do the 2 weeks of getting my eggs ready. So it was not like saying, we're not going to do this, but throwing this little doubt in my head. And I walked out of there and he's like, oh, go get the blood work. Then I met with his top RN and I looked at her. I said, why am I doing this if he doesn't think I can do this, if this can't happen? And she looked at me, she gave me a little nod of the head, just don't listen to him. And that day I had an appointment with my acupuncturist, and I walked in and I said, I don't know, maybe I have to find a new doctor that believes. Like in my heart, there was not a doubt this is what I was supposed to do at this moment. And she said, you're in a good place. You have you're doing everything right. Don't let any doubters, even if it's this doctor, get in your way. And something clicked, and I didn't let anything get in the way. Whether it's someone from my family, not that they meant it, but anybody with any negativity was not in my premise. So I was very clear on like who was giving me the positive thinking and who was not.
Which is a part of that's life. You're going to be at the 99-yard line at different moments in life, and then have that voice, whether it's your own voice in your head or somebody else, start to make you question and be that resistance to you. But thank God for what you said. It was a nurse. It was the nurse and my acupuncture. The nurse, great advice. Yeah, she just said, "You go for it." Both of those girls, and I have to say, and I'm not big like women, men, but like when you're a woman going through something like this and you have such a desire for a baby, and listen, Cornell is not a small hospital to do IVF. You're literally sitting in a room. I mean, if I could paint it, it's a large room, and people are we had to go every other day to get blood work, every other day to check our follicles. Plus giving our shots to ourselves every day in our stomachs. Everybody had a story there. And I'm thinking, there's so much emotion doing this, and you don't even know what you're doing when you're first doing it. Wow.
And there's not this nurture, like talk about, there's no nurturing or an environment that embraces that, the fear, the unknown. And, I think that's the biggest thing I learned by doing this is like how much, it doesn't matter IVF or whatever, but how much when you really got to find an environment that nurtures, supports what you're desiring. Mm-hmm. Whether it's IVF, building a business, going through a divorce, I don't care what you're doing. That's the biggest thing I learned through IVF is like finding those people around me that believed in me.
Right.
And allowed for that. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm painting a good enough picture.
No. To reiterate that, I think that is so important for any of you who are out there that are listening to this, that, you're not necessarily facing IVF, but the importance of what Wendy's talking about is that you are surrounding yourself with people who are going to help push you into your next phase of life, that next season, that piece that you cannot see. And that's, you had two people who were willing to sow into you and believe for something they could not see, something you could not see, but yet you so desperately, you could feel it with every fiber in your body, and you knew it in your early 30s. Yep. And yet you had people telling you at 35, making you question what you inherently knew, that intuition. And I know that that's something that you really help to try and uncover with your own clients, because it's really hard to do something that you have never done before. And especially when you don't have other people around you doing it.
Yeah, I think exactly what you're saying. I mean, that's my passion right now, and probably for my whole life, but I didn't have the words for it, is like really honoring that person's essence, that person's knowing, even when it makes no sense. And I think I've gone through it from golf. Like I went through it in golf. I went through it through IVF. I'm going through it with my business, because everybody has a vision of what they think you should do. But your inside's telling you no, but do you have the courage to take that step?
Right. Because that's the hard thing about intuition, because you can't typically explain why. It's a knowing. You just have this knowing, but then you have a lot of people start to question it. You do this internal questioning inside yourself. wondering whether or not that knowing that you have is in fact correct or not. You don't know until you walk it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think space is huge in creating, and I think because I didn't really know who to trust during IVF, I had so much space by myself. I had so much space to like really dig into, is this right for me? And even when I did golf and I was a novice when it comes to the mindset, during golf, you're alone a lot. Mm. When you're doing a baby by yourself and you're doing these shots and you're by yourself. A great story, not a great story, but like my second time trying to have my second baby, the doctor looked at me because I was like, what's next? Like, she was like, your chances are, but she was positive, but she said, I said, what's next? Like, I only have 3 follicles. Should we do this? She goes, you're funny. I go, why? She goes, you're so strong. And I go, well, what's my choice? And she said, not everybody's like that. They're very emotional. And I said, I don't have someone holding my hand. I don't have a guy. Right. It's just me. Right. So I have, and whether you're out there listening, whatever is inside of you that you know you're supposed to move towards, even if you don't have the answer, even if you took a step, you can at least eliminate that. Oh, I took this step and maybe that doesn't work. Okay, that's not working. Let's try something else. Right. But most people get frozen, including me, for how many years that I just told you, like I wanted a family, and I was waiting for that guy. Right. Or I was waiting for like the doctor to tell me that I could freeze my eggs at 35. Mm-hmm. We know what the answers are. We just have to take the step to get them.
Right. And be willing to hit up against the resistance. I mean, you know, I know what it's like to be married. I mean, I love my husband dearly and he's very much on my team. But I also know as I started to evolve 4 years ago and I didn't see myself in the same position that I had been for the prior 16 years, that was really hard because he was going, wait, I don't understand how this new thing that you want to be doing is going to fit into our world that we've built, this company that we've built the last 16 years. And so truthfully, a lot of times he was the resistance. And so, you know, it was kind of like that slowing up. I don't want to upset the apple cart, but yet when you just know something deep inside of you that's just calling you to something else, you have to be willing to bump up and push past the resistance. And that can be in your own home. I mean, truthfully, it's not about, you know, completely disregarding somebody else's, you know, thoughts and how it all kind of works together. But you also have to say, you know, am I hurting people because I'm doing this? No. I just know that I'm being called to something different and I'm evolving. And so sometimes that's even within your own home. I mean, I always said, you know, in my book, a man is not a financial plan. Hashtag. I'm sure it can be shortened down.
I should have read your book. Why didn't you write it earlier?
Yeah, but we could just shorten it. A man is not a plan. And it's true. I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes on the other side of it of waiting for the man. You know, first one I divorced at 24 to make choices for me, because I didn't trust myself enough to make wise decisions. I felt that somebody else needed to say grace on it, then it was acceptable, until I realized I got old enough to go, I am perfectly capable of making decisions, even if they don't necessarily make the person standing next to me, that they don't understand it. And that's okay.
Yeah. And sometimes your path isn't what we envision it. It actually can be even better, but we have to take those steps.
Right.
It's like, you know, I thought I was going to be an athlete. Like I put everything in. I failed, but did I fail? I don't really consider it failure. Like I learned so much about myself by doing that, that it brought me all the other steps. So I always say to my clients, like, you know, these moments, you don't get it right now, but you will look back and be like, that makes sense why I did this and this and this and this and this. Mm-hmm. It's like a zigzag.
Yeah.
There's no rhyme. Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason until you look back. And a lot of it's faith. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's faith in yourself.
Yep.
We are all born unique. And that is my biggest message of the people I work with or in the world. Like, we are born unique. If we don't live into our uniqueness and our gifts, we are leaving that untapped in this world. And we need everybody needs to give our gift, each other's gifts. You've got to live your own, not someone else's.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so take us back. You started IVF and you said you're 40 when you initially started?
So I was 40. Mm-hmm.
40. And so what was the process like? And, when did that amazing girl come on the scene?
So the process, if anyone's on IVF that's listening, it's confusing. First time around, it's very confusing. Like they don't tell you, they're kind of just taking your blood, they're reading things. So you're doing a little bit of research. You're trying to figure out what FSH is. And so the process is basically, one, you gotta get your sperm donor. If you already have a husband, you have your husband. But then the next process is, okay, you've got to track your cycle. Then you have to pick right before the certain time, right after your cycle, you start getting ready to like harvest your eggs. And most times you can get, from what I understand, 10 or more is great eggs at one time. I got 6, and you don't even know if they're all healthy. And the end of when we had the embryos put in, which you were waiting, basically you're doing a 2-week of medicine, getting progged every day in the stomach. I had to take 3 different medicines that are very costly. And you have to have them in the fridge. Like everything's timing. It's like, it's really a huge dedication. Anybody doing it, I honor you, because it's emotional, everything. It's planning. Anyway, so it's 2 weeks before you get your embryos, your eggs, then you get your embryos. So 2 weeks, every other day going into the hospital to get your blood work and checking your follicles. And then there's not like a perfect science. So you have to figure out when your follicles are ready to drop. Then you go in, there's an operation where they take out your eggs. And every time I went in towards the end where they take your eggs out, then you have a waiting time, and it depends. But mine was 5 days. Then they call you and you're waiting. Did the embryos take? I've got 2 embryos out of 4 eggs. So then the next decision, I didn't really have a big decision. I was putting both in. But sometimes people have, like, how many embryos are you going to put in? I don't know.
Right.
So go in, you get put out to put those embryos in. And I remember when I woke up, I had a picture of my dad and the embryos on my belly. Now my dad's passed 17 years now. And when I was doing this in March, I knew the possibility of Josie being born around Christmas time was evident. So yes, so I meditate probably daily with the embryo pictures on my belly and my father. And I kept talking to that embryo, if that makes sense. I just really, I was not going to let any thoughts of doubt come in my mind. Whether it happened or not, I was staying positive.
Yeah.
And then I got that call, and you wait 4 weeks, and both embryos took. The only ones who knew were my sister and mom and a couple of friends. And then I waited to tell my brothers and his wives until I was 8 weeks. So had twins. And at 8 weeks, I told my family, this is what's happening. And I was very quiet outside my work, everything. And then I lost one at 9 weeks. So that was like a big awareness that I don't have control. I'm just going to honor and stay true to me and not go telling everybody anything. Pretty much everybody was supportive. I was a little nervous to tell the golf club I worked at for some reason. I don't know why. They were receptive. I just had one during my pregnancy. I had one not so kind person be a member.
Yes. Do tell.
Do you want to know?
Yes, I do want to know. These are the things, individuals, you don't say to people. Don't say or do.
No, I mean, because like, do I want to share the story? I mean, this is real. Like,
right.
I would say pretty much, I'll give you 2 stories. One, I told my dad's brother, and he goes, "What?" Wendy's pregnant? Did I miss her wedding?
Oh, you gotta love that. You gotta love that.
That was a good story. And then this other guy, I was teaching a lesson, pregnant, probably in July. So Josie was due Christmas Eve, 2012. And I'm probably mid-July, so I'm starting to pop. And this gentleman knew, he knew definitely that I was pregnant. And he across the way, it's just me and my client, him and another guy. And he goes, hey, to his buddy, hey, do you know who knocked up Wendy? Yeah. And he said it 2 times that day in 2 different incidents. And
oh my goodness.
I was like, I can handle a point. And then I had to stand up and be like, he said it in front of the entire staff at dinner. So I think, and I always have compassion. This is what I will say. People don't really mean what they mean sometimes. And I think how we respond is so important to not, it helps me stay in the frame of how I want to be as a human, as a woman being pregnant without a father that I knew of. And I handled it so, I really gained strength to stand for myself that I normally hadn't before. And I let him know, like, he was like, I apologize. I said, well, I would have let you know that was so inappropriate. And some people just don't know, what to say in a circumstance that's a little different than what they've been around. And I really have compassion for people that sometimes spit something out and they don't mean.
The wrong thing comes out.
I draw my boundaries, but like, I'm not going to let that guy hurt me.
Right.
Or some words hurt me. And I think that's one thing I do work with a lot with my clients, because sometimes people's words or actions, they take in so personal. And we have no control. We only have control over us. That's all. And how we respond to it.
What do you think, because I've had friends who've gone through IVF, and I've had, friends that almost refuse to talk about it, even to friends that are struggling at getting pregnant but really want to. Why do you think that is?
I don't come from that. I've been very open about it. And I think there's a lot of, like, what are you going to say to your kid? What are you going to say? So I have a lot of nieces and nephews. My daughter is one of 18. So I had a lot of, like, my brother's wife saying, what do I tell my kids? Like, where you're not married, you don't have a husband. How do I explain that you're pregnant? How do I explain where her daddy is? And to me, like, I'm just honest. Like, I really tell Josie she doesn't know the whole story, but if she asks, I'm going to tell her.
Sure.
So I think there's a lot of internal work for people that are a little nervous to share, because you could help so many people. Like, I want to help. If anybody I am so fortunate that I was able to have Josie because I barely had eggs. If anybody has an inkling to talk about having a baby on their own, even early 30s, I'm all ears. I want to help them, because we as women, we're meant, like, I have changed as a woman because I became a mom. I'm changed as a coach. It teaches you so much about selflessness, about how to be the best you can for another human, and how you sacrifice to even have the child, even if it's not IVF.
Right.
I mean, I have a different outlook to moms.
Right.
I remember the first Mother's Day, I was like, what? Like, this is what my mom did to have 6 kids? I only have 1, I mean, I could cry. But anybody who's like, I don't know the answer of why people stay quiet, but I believe we share with our stories, and our stories really can help other humans make better choices for themselves and feel like they're not alone in the struggle. And I'm if anybody's listening and wants to reach out to me, like, I'm open because it's changed my life having this individual.
Yeah. Do you think that you would have, if you were, in your early 30s and you would have had somebody like you who had already been there and been through it, come alongside you, or kind of, just happened to get to know, do you think that this would have happened sooner for you personally if you would have just had that person who maybe you could relate to a little bit more, or just even hearing a little bit more about it? Or were you doing a lot of research at that time of a lot of other people's stories of going through it?
No, I ignored. Like for a long time, I just didn't even take a step. I didn't research. I didn't even think even to go that way, even though I joked around. Like I didn't do enough research. But I will say, would I have done it early on if I met someone? Possibly, but I wasn't mature enough. Me personally,
like, and God has good timing.
and this is why. Yes, exactly. He does know. This is why I love my work, because I know I just woke up at 30 as an individual, starting to learn about myself. When you take the space to do work on yourself, it changes, like, it's not just yourself. It changes like how you operate with individuals, your relationships, your work, your purpose in life. It just moves the needle in a different way that like a book can't help.
Right.
I'm not saying your book, but I mean,
right.
we can read all we want. We can read all we want, but the personal work has to happen. We're not taught that when we're young. It's. I mean, a lot of people are struggling right now, not just because of COVID. COVID is waking up what already existed.
Right.
And I would say I probably wasn't ready, but I want to help people that are. If that makes sense. Like I want to nurture people that to help them have the mindset that they can do it.
Right.
If I met someone maybe like that, yes. But
yeah, I'm glad that you're sharing it, because I think back to some girlfriends years ago, and when I heard, one gal they'd tried for 10 years to have a child, and she was telling me about the story as she was sitting at a bridal or at a baby shower with another friend, a mutual friend. And she didn't know until years later that child was conceived through IVF. And here she said it was such a struggle. And here I'm, looking at her and I'm like, well, isn't she so lucky and so fortunate? And she said it would have been so nice to know that she was also in the battle with me. Yep. And some people just aren't willing to share their personal stories that way. But hearing her talk about how much she would have loved to have known that a friend of hers was in the same battle that she was in. And then they eventually did have a little boy, I think probably about 15 years after they got married. So it was a long battle for a lot of years to try and make that happen. But just having her express that was just kind of that moment going, gosh, what a great opportunity as a friend to be able to step into that place privately. It doesn't have to be done publicly, but to share a little bit of yourself with somebody else who is right in the fight or a little further back in the battle. You know what I'm saying? That's why we tell stories.
Yeah. And I will say this, like was just pregnant, and I was at some jewelry party, and again, I could have been quiet because I was nervous to say I was pregnant. Sure. But I said to one of the girls who was a distant friend, who I went to grade school with, I said, yeah, I am pregnant, but I'm being very quiet. And she was like, do you know, I've 8 years with her husband. It took them 8 years to have their first kid. And she had her last file of eggs that she went to 4 different doctors. Wow. And then she had 2 through IVF and 2 natural.
Wow.
You just don't, God has a plan. And she telling that gave me encouragement. She was always texting me. She went to see Josie when she was born. So like, there is something about letting people in.
Yeah.
If you have the courage, it really can change the way you have support around you during this hard time.
Right.
Whether you're married or not. Yeah. I mean, even if you're married, I don't know how much like always men understand.
Totally.
And
trying to understand even something they haven't been through, so that's one thing. And then, men aren't generally as hardwired emotionally with that connection piece of really wanting to dive into, let's sit and talk about some of these things. So there's another disconnect that comes to it. But I mean, especially if a man hasn't been through that, how is he going to really be able to provide adequate support that's really going to help maybe stifle some of those feelings of insecurity or stress or fear that are going on within you?
Yeah. And then I would say this is also, I don't think most facilities, fertility places have that design to support you. And you've got to, I hate to say it, you've got to find it. So if it's me or someone else, you've got to reach out and have that support, because it only enhances the variables of you making that happen to have the baby that you desire. Right. Because if you're sitting there quiet and just going in the hospital that I know, the energy's different. It's not like, you got this. It's not that energy. It's just like, you're almost like a number. Oh, and you get called to check. And so you've got to go out and find that support so this can happen. Because I'm a believer. I mean, I really am. And everything, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just in stress in general, I mean, that doesn't help. We know that stress causes all sorts of things. So being able to have, whether it's a group that you go to or, an individual or, something, you have somebody that can understand and has walked part of that journey ahead of you, then that can at least help to reduce some of the stress, which is going to allow your body to do what it is that it needs to do to be successful. So that just adds to it. So tell us a little bit about this wonderful young lady in your life.
So she was
born when? December?
So the funny thing is, I asked my sister, will you do hypnobirthing with me? So there we were with 8 couples hypnobirthing, 8 weeks. There my sister comes into the labor room, which is, she was due Christmas Eve. I started to get contractions the next morning, Christmas Day. And my doctor was like, like most doctors, don't call me until you're 5 minutes apart, the contractions. I guess my water broke a little bit. She's like, get your hiney in here. So it was basically, I got in there. She was born at 7:07. It was like, my water broke and I was determined to have natural. I was so determined. They had to do Pitocin, but my doctor was amazing. She definitely managed the whole thing, because I don't even know how I had natural doing Pitocin, but 4 hours of labor, Josie came out. My mom is in the labor room as well, 6 kids. I don't think she's ever sat in anybody's labor room except her own.
Wow.
And she's sitting doing the crossword puzzle. It was hysterical. Anyway, so Josie's born Christmas Day, a day after my dad was buried. Wow. And she's named after my dad. Aww. So Josephine June. My dad was Joseph Jr. So we used to call him the June. And this is how Live Your June came about.
Your company. Yeah.
It really is about leaving your imprint in the world. And if I don't do my job or your job or whoever's listening, if you don't do your job to leave your imprint from your essence, your uniqueness, and take in those people from past generations that you've learned from and leave it for future generations, we are doing a disservice. Like, my goal is to get everybody to be so in line with who they are meant to be, to live their June. And I do that with Josie. Like, I have to be my best so she can thrive and be her best. If I don't do that, I'm doing her a disservice.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it. I mean, so Josie's amazing. Loves, not athletic, kinda, but doesn't have that drive like you and me.
It's not inherently born into children. Trust me, I know.
And it's so hard when you don't have that kid, right? That you're like, what?
Yep. I know. I've had, people just automatically assume, oh, so your kids must be really athletic. I'm like, it doesn't automatically just happen that way.
No, it doesn't.
But we certainly get out and do things. And so it's not that they just sit around all day, but yeah, I totally know what you mean. So why don't you tell us, throughout this whole experience that you went through, what were the 3 key things that you took away from this?
My biggest thing is there's an inner voice. I always feel like sometimes if you've got to listen to your inner voice, you've got to pay attention create space to listen to that knowing that doesn't make sense, but it's telling you to do something. When we go against that, usually we don't feel we're going against we get a little friction to me. When you're in flow, it's because you're so in tune with that voice. So listen to the voice. One is take action when you have no answers. We always want the playbook first, but sometimes we have to we have a feeling, oh, what does that look like? Because most times I didn't know what it looked like, how I was going to take care of a kid by myself, not having a house, or I was living with my mom. I didn't know what it looked like, but it worked out. I figured it out.
Right.
And then the third one, did you ask for 3?
Yeah.
Sorry.
If you got a third, yeah, please.
And again, it talks about what we were just talking about. You have to find those people that believe in you and support you. That environment that empowers you. I mean, I was just saying it with a mastermind group I'm in, of a small group of people that just look at want to change the world. And when I'm around them, I move. When I'm around Arwen, I move, because I don't have that every day.
Right.
But when I'm around you, I get inspired to want to do more and be and not be afraid and to take that step. And so I would say those are my 3.
So good. I just love it. And I want to ask you about that, listening to that voice for you. And you talk about creating space to be able to hear it. What does that practically look like for you? I mean, how do you create that space, and what is it that how do you hear it for you personally? So
for me, it's the space. It's a gaining awareness when you feel at your best. So with my clients, I talk about their ethos. That's my main start to how I coach them. And it's really getting clear on when they're shining. Think of when you were young. I watch Josie. I mean, when I watch my daughter operate when she's singing and then when she's playing sport, I'm like, what? It's not her thing. Mm-hmm. Even though she can do it somewhat, sure. It's not her thing. It's going, as an adult, we kind of moved away from, sometimes people move away from that and they feel so disconnected and they can't pin it. To me, it's like going back to the times where you felt so powerful, where you felt so alive. And you might have to go back to your childhood. You might have to go to a certain thing you did in your 20s. But we really get down into the values and the characteristics, and then create a philosophy that's 25 words or less, where you really nail it. Mine is disrupt my norm and instigate my soul, so I can live my truest self, so I can empower others. That's mine. Mm-hmm. But when you know your philosophy, it's so easy to align to it, because you'll be like, that's not it. Right. Right. And so when you have, that's how I do it. Create space so you do the hard work to go, who am I? And have you say the philosophy, yes, but having that clearly written. Mm-hmm. It's not like a one, it's not like, this took me, do you know how long it took me? I mean, it's taken me a long time, but really focused for at least 3 years that I'm like, that's it. Yeah. Yeah. But you have to start moving towards it, and then it gets refined, and you keep, polishing the edges until you go, this is what I know I'm called to do at this moment in my life. This is what I know that I'm called to do. And then those things that come to you along the way, you can determine that does not fit in with the vision or the philosophy of way I'm living my life right now. So that is a no. And then I continue moving forward. And then those things do come to you that fit in line with it. And those are the things that you accept. So that also allows for more space, because you're not throwing a bunch of crap into your life that isn't moving you towards your destiny, whatever that is. And it's different for everybody. And we're constantly evolving. So you constantly have to check in. Right. It's not, it's not like yesterday. If you saw me, you'd be like, who? I had my moments too. We all have them. It's just, can you get out of it quicker and not stay in it? Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so good. Oh, so good. So, all right. Rapid fire, final 3 questions. All right. You ready for these? Okay. Here we go. So what is the best piece of financial wisdom that you've been given? Oh God. Okay. So just so you know, it's not my favorite. I literally get knots in my stomach about finance, business. It goes back to the same thing that I'm talking about in general, surrounding yourself around people that really look at you. Finance, to me, the people that this is why I love Arwen. She's a different, she doesn't fit the mold of the finance world.
Nope.
She is her own unique being. And like, I wouldn't even consider her, she's in the finance world, because she just has this warmth and she's powerful. And when the people I have been in, after my dad died, I didn't have a guy helping me. And then I left it to my dad, and then my dad dies. I got to figure this out. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's, don't just go to any finance person. Yeah. Find the one that resonates with you and hears you and sits with you and understands. That's my biggest thing. Mm. And there are out there, obviously, we have Arwen. I'm not kidding. And
I have advisors that are that way too. Yes.
I'm not, but yeah. It's important. This is your life. And finance is a huge part of feeling comfortable and free.
Yep. Yeah. I have to say, Wendy, of the past 33 shows that I've done, nobody has given that advice. And yet that is the entire platform of my keynote and my public speaking, is that, first of all, women are not a niche. They're talked about being a niche, but they're the greatest segment of the U.S. population. They hold more money than men do. But the part in which you alluded to is the fact that, you said, when I talk about finances, I get this knot in my stomach. The analogy that I use, because I've seen it over and over and over again with women, and you would certainly fall into that category, is talking about finances is like going into a brand new gynecologist. And a lot of financial advisors walk straight into the room and they say, I'd like you to undress. And she's like, wait, I'm not ready for this yet. And for any woman on the planet who's ever had to go to a gynecologist and go in for an annual exam knows how intimidating, scary, there might be feelings of shame, certainly fear and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of advisors do exactly what you said. They walk straight in there and they ask a woman to financially undress, and she's afraid. She doesn't feel like she's done the right thing. She doesn't know what somebody's going to say in reference to what they see. And so it has a lot of that same component of fear associated with it. And I think about my own gynecologist. She's just such a warm, like the nicest. This before COVID, I had to see her, since then, but before COVID, she would always come in and she would grab my hand, and her hands were always warm, and she would look at me straight in the eye and she'd go, "And how are you doing?" Mm-hmm. And it was just like, all she needed to give me was 2-3 minutes where we didn't have to talk about the things that scared me. Just to say, how are the kids? Mm-hmm. Is there anything going on that we should know about? And seeing me as a human and helping me be comfortable. So I wanted to piggyback off of that, because you are the norm, not the exception, and that's why my industry needs to change. They need to talk to women from the heart, then get to the head space. We have to go into the details. We have to get there eventually. But remembering that finances are a very hard topic to talk about, and they make a lot of us very uncomfortable. So I just had to piggyback on that.
And I have to add to this, starting a company, I never thought I would ever start a company. I didn't think I was smart enough or capable and when I started this, I can see it in their face that they don't believe me. I actually was told, I don't know if it was my accountant or financial, that it's a hobby. So those are things, if you're listening and you have an accountant that doesn't see you and doesn't honor your journey, then that's not the right person.
Move on.
Yes.
There's plenty out there. You just got to do the work. Yeah, yes. Find them. Good. Thank you for doing. Oh, that's so invaluable. It's so important. So next piece is favorite book and why.
Okay, so I gave you one, but Daring to Lead is a big one with Brene Brown. I love, because it really is about stripping, almost what you're just talking about, like really stripping down and being real and sharing the things that are hard to share. Mm-hmm. That's when people want to be led by people like that. And as I build my company, I've just hired 2 girls the last month and a half. I want to empower them.
Yeah.
Leadership, to me, we all are leaders. A mom, business, coach, whatever. We have a job to be real. And I think that she does a great way in that book, Daring to Lead, to show that vulnerability is huge.
Yep, certainly. And then finally, a favorite quote.
So because I'm all about leaving your mark, every day in every way, we are leaving our mark, by Rachel Binghamton.
And say it again. Say the quote again.
So every day in every way, we are leaving our mark. And I really, I just leave it like that. I watch you, because Arwen's like interviewing with my high school friend in New York for finance. I'm like, there's Arwen and Nicole. But it's just we are leaving our mark, and we have to walk towards that. And you might not know what it is. That's okay. But
that's right.
It's
okay. That's good. So how can our listeners get a hold of you? Tell us all the good details about you, your website, your coaching, everything good.
Okay. So I'm in the midst of moving into Live Your June. The website's not out, but you will find it, liveyourjune.com. Right now, you can find it under my name, my website. Currently, it's under my coaching, wendyposillico.com.
And spell your last name. Make sure we get that right.
Posillico. So it's wendyposillico.com. You can email me. It's very easy, either at wp@wendyposillico.com or wendy@liveyourjune.com. I'm on Instagram under my name. Live Your June, again, is coming out in the next month. Really, I just, if I can help anyone walk into what we're talking about, whether it's finance, imprint, mindset, because that is what all of it is to me, a mindset of like setting the stage for what allows you to live into your, I call it your June. We all have our own unique way. So, yeah.
And you are a testament, because I've seen it. You and I have known each other now for about 3 years. And just looking at the difference for you, looking at how far you've come just in that time period of that 3 years. Anybody out there that wants to have a woman who can help them really move into their destiny, that is what you do, because you've done it. You're continuing to do it daily in your own life. The amount in which you've grown in the last 3 years is remarkable, and yet it's just a small part of your whole life. So, you are a perfect person to learn from and to have to lead other people, because you lead yourself first and you lead yourself well, and then you're helping to do that in other people. So anybody out there, you would be blessed to take her up on that offer.
Thank you. And right back at you. I think it's somehow we find each other, that like we nurture each other. And I think it's, I think you do the work as well, Arwen. And to be on this podcast and watch you in the last year, just throw out a book. Hey, do a podcast with all that I know you do already, and 4 kids. It's just an honor to be on your podcast.
Well, I only got 3, unless I have a 4th one somewhere.
Oh, did I
don't know
4?
about it. Yeah, that's all right.
It's my world that I get confused. 6, 18.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, well, thank you so much for being on the show, my dear. You're just such a blessing, and I hope to see you very, very soon.
All right. Thanks so much.